Hello, this is Professor Tom Wolf, and this is the seventh in a series of videos that show how to use the Java Swing graphical user interface system. In this video, we're going to go ahead and start a new application, and I'm going to show you a little bit more with the layout, and we're going to use the features we've seen already to develop this. So I'm going to go ahead and develop the application with you. But to make sure I've got everything together, I've already done that. We're going to create an application that pages through a series of quotes. And initially, the quotes are just going to be the text of the quote and the name of the author. And so you're going to see that we'll create a quote class for that. Then we'll have our GUI in a quoter frame.java, and we'll have a main quoter viewer that displays that. So let's start by creating the quote.java here. So this is my new project. So new Java class. This is going to be called quote. And I'll go ahead and click finish. And then we'll just go ahead and start to create the class very quickly here. So as I mentioned, a quote consists of the text of the quote, which of course will be a string. So this will be private string. We'll call this qtext. We can do better. Let's see. Let's call this quote text. And then we'll also have private string author text. There could be author name too. And then let's go ahead and put in our accesses and getters. And the idea here is that you're not going to change the quote's text or author after the fact. So we'll simply create a constructor to create the quote once, and then the getters to get the fields. So we're going to go ahead and insert code. I'll start with the constructor. And I want both of the fields in the constructor. I'll hit generate. So now when I create a quote, I give it the text and the author, and that gets stored in the quote object. All right, let's go ahead and insert the getters. As I mentioned, we won't have any setters here. It doesn't really make sense to change the text or the author of a quote. So this is really like static data. So insert code. In this case, we only need the getter. We'll go ahead and click to get all of them. We'll hit generate. And so then I have, whoops, looks like I picked the setter instead, which is the exact opposite of what I wanted. I'll go ahead and delete that and try again. Insert code, getter. There we go. And again, we want both. Hit generate. So we have get quote text, get author text. Okay. All right, this is actually done. Let's go ahead and begin to create our quoter frame. And let me just show you this real quickly in the old program here. So again, this is going to extend the J-frame. We'll put our resources here in the class, and then we'll have a constructor. And we're going to use some secondary functions here to create the GUI, which will probably just make it work a little bit better. It makes the code more readable, and it lays it out. Notice I have a method called load quotes. That's where all of the quotes are. I might go ahead and copy that instead of recoding that for you. Okay, so let's get started on this. This is called quoter frame. And now I need to create a new version of that in this new project because I want to write it. And this is a Java class. So this is called quoter frame. And let's type finish. I guess there's no way to tell it to do the inheritance, so we'll have to put that in manually. So this is going to inherit a frame, and we're kind of adopting that style where we use the word frame as part of the name. So this is extends JFrame, and I'm going to have to put the import in there. So Control-Shift-I, we'll put the JFrame import in. And then I'm going to come on down here, and of course I'll have a constructor. I can go ahead and insert the constructor here. And so insert code, constructor, and we don't want to pass these things in. So we do want the super constructor here. So let's see, we want this one where we can add the title in. Let's see how this goes. It might not give us exactly what we want. And yeah, it did. Excellent. Well, no, it didn't. So actually, I thought what it was going to do is, yeah, there it is. Only we don't want to pass the title in here. So let's get rid of this. And we'll get rid of this too. This is just temporary because the method isn't concrete yet. We haven't filled it out. So the first thing we're going to do, since this is a JFrame, is we'll call the super and pass the title in. And here the title will be my, well, actually, I'll make it Tom's. So Tom Wolf's quote collection. This is a little different than what I normally do. I normally have people implement a quoter that feeds random quotes and doesn't repeat a quote. This time we're going to make a set of quotes where the user can traverse them using a typical kind of VCR-like controls. So first, last, next, previous type controls. Later on, if I'm not sure about this, but I'm sort of thinking about having us develop this as a model. So right now I'm doing this with quotes, but you could just as easily have an image viewer or a file display thing that would let you page through a collection of things. So we might be able to generalize the code we're writing now to make it less specific and make it work with multiple objects. I think that would be pretty cool. Okay, I'm going to have a series of helper methods, and the first one is going to be create or load the quotes. I'm going to call it load quotes. Load kind of implies that I'm reading the quotes from a file. I'm not actually doing that, but eventually I will want to do that. Okay, so I can go ahead and tell NetBeans to create the load quotes method for me to save time. I'll just do that. And you can see private load quotes. We'll go ahead and get rid of the exception. We don't really want that in there because we're going to go ahead and put code in almost immediately here. All right, so to save time, I'm going to look at my previous code. And basically, I have an array list of quotes that I'm going to use as my main data object here. So I think I'm going to save time and just go ahead and copy all this, and then I'll go through and explain. And I'm going to change this a little bit from when I did it originally because there was something I didn't like that was in the display. So the layout, I was kind of struggling to get the display. And basically what I'm going to do, oh good, so it's going to add all the imports for the pasted code. That's really nice. Okay, so we're going to have a series of J panels. We're going to have one master panel, and then that will have border layout on it. Then we'll have a title panel, a display panel where the quote and the author will be, and then at the bottom a control panel that has essentially my control buttons. So I could call that button panel too, but its control panel will work. Here are the buttons. I have a first, previous, next, last, and quit. Here's my array list of quotes that I just mentioned. And then originally I was going to have labels to go with the quote and the author, but I didn't like the way that looked, so I'm not going to have those anymore. And I might need to manipulate some of the interface a little bit here without having those. So I will have these text fields that represent the quote and the author, and those should actually be read-only. So we'll have to figure out how to do that. I'm going to set up some different fonts. So I have a title font here, and the display font, and then font for my buttons. I won't need the label font because I got rid of those extra labels, so I only have the title. And then it turns out that this current quote text is an integer, which is the index of what quote is currently selected to be displayed, and that refers to the array list. Okay, looking at the previous code here, we call load quotes to load the quotes. We set up our fonts, and then we set up our panels. So let's go ahead and just add this code in. I'm going to go ahead and just copy it all here. It'll just save me time if I do it exactly the same way as I worked out already. So again, this is my constructor, and I'm going to basically paste this in here. And it looks like I have to include border layout, so I will. And then we don't need the label font, so I'll delete that line. That's why that line's showing up there. And then we don't need the second call to super. I changed that. I changed the name of the app. And then, okay, so we have our load quotes. We have to create these other methods. So I'll just come down here real quickly. Create all these methods. These are just static methods that just organizes the creation of the GUI. So there's a lot of stuff going on here, and so I just set this up. Again, I'm going to go ahead and remove the exception here. This is when you create a method. So when you try to call it accidentally and you haven't initialized it, that is, you haven't provided the code, it'll throw the exception that shows that you haven't implemented that. That's handy dandy if you want to run a bunch of stuff, but really we don't need that because we're going to fill these methods in. Okay, let's look at the load quotes method. Basically, I'm just using the add method to add the quotes to the quotes array list. And then I'm creating the quotes on the fly with the constructor. So again, the quote takes the quote text and the author text. And then I'm setting the current quote text to 0, which is the first one. So I'm just going to copy all this code because it's easy enough for you to understand. There's no reason really for you to watch me type it up. And again, it's very straightforward. Let's just make sure, we'll look at the first one here. So new quote, Cowabunga Dude is the text, Bart Simpson is the author, and then we add that new quote to the quotes array, array list, okay? And again, I have that up here, array list, quote, quotes equals new array list, okay? So then the next one is going to be to create the title panel. And basically what this is going to do is it's going to take my the main title for the application. And so I'll put that in a border, the north border of the main layout. So we have this title label here that we have to set up. So this is straightforward. And notice that title label is already declared, so I don't put the, that equals new JLabel Tom Wolf's quote collection. Sounds good. And then, and we also need to create the panel for this. So we need a title panel here. Let's just make sure we have that. Sure, so title panel, main panel. So we created the main panel already. We set the layout to border layout. And now here in the title panel, we're going to go ahead and create that. So let's put that first. Title PNL equals new JPanel. And that doesn't need any parameter at all. And then now we put our title label in, and we want to set the font on the title label. So title label dot, oops. Let's see what's going on there. There we go. Set font. Oops. And then I already have a font that I created up here in main. That's the title font. So we'll have 3 fonts that we're going to use. And because we're reusing them, I went ahead and created font instances with names. So this is title font. And notice that we don't have to pass any parameters in there. We've already defined the title font. Okay, we need to add the title label to the title panel. So I'm sorry, yeah, that's right. Okay, so title label, or excuse me, title panel dot add title label. And then we want to add the title panel to the main panel. So main panel dot add title panel. And then because we set the border up here, we have to specify that. So this is going to be border layout dot north. Oops, that's why it didn't come up. I had it spelled wrong. There we go. So border layout north. That looks pretty good. And I think that's all we need the create title panel to do. Okay. Let's come on down here. Now, let me stop for a second. And because I've blanked these methods all out down below, they'll just run, but they don't do anything. So the create title panel is working. We've got the main panel here. And let's see. Okay, so what I was thinking about is I could run this incrementally and build the GUI. But really, I'm not going to be able to because I have to create these panels. And when it tries to add them in, it probably won't. But, well, we can try it and see. So let's come on down here and just start to add the final code in. So the final code will take the JFrame and add the main panel to it. Okay, so that's JFrame, add main panel. And then we also want to set the size. And I've been kind of playing around with that, but let's go with 200. Oops, didn't have my caps lock off there, sorry, or num lock. So 200, I think by 500 is going to work. We'll probably end up resizing that though. And then finally, set default close operation, and that's going to be exit on close. Is that JFrame? Yeah, JFrame dot exit on close. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So actually, as we build this, it should actually display it. So what I should see now is just my title panel. And I do need to create a runner to run this. So I'll go ahead and do that now so I can start running my code incrementally as I develop. This will be a Java main class. And we're going to call it quoter viewer. And I'll hit finish. And we'll go ahead and adjust that a bit. And then since the JFrame we're using is inherited, it's a quoter frame, we can define it as a type of JFrame. So JFrame frame equals new quoter frame, and then Control Shift I to include the J frame. Now, since I have the set visible in here already, oops, that's the wrong one. Since I have the, I don't have the set visible here. Okay, so we'll put that in the driver. So this is frame dot set visible, and then this would be true. Okay, so this is what we run to test this. Let's go ahead and test it right away. So whoops. So frame viewer, yeah, we should have a run. Yeah, that's weird. Java. Why isn't it letting me run that? Well, I'm not sure why it's not allowing me to run the file. Let's see what's going on here. Oh, you know what? I already have something running. That's what happened. I forgot to close the interface. So maybe I'm wrong about that. No, that is odd. All right, let's just close some of these things here. So this is my quoter viewer. Yeah, just to make sure I got the right files, I'm going to go ahead and close all this up. Okay, so I won't need to edit quoter Java. I'll open the quoter frame that I'm working on and the quoter viewer, and now I still can't run the file. That's really weird. All right, let's see what happens. Haven't seen this before. It doesn't want to let me run the file. All right, I guess I'll have to pause this for a minute and figure out what's going on. Well, I haven't seen this before, but for some reason NetBeans would not let me run the file. And so what I had to do was close and reopen it, and now it will. So here is my project, and here's the quote viewer that we were about to run. Again, we've only done the first part of the GUI, so you can see that there is the title panel that I put in, and I can see already that I want to change the dimensions here. So I want to make it wider, and maybe I'll go ahead and leave it the height that it is. So let's go back into quoter frame, and let's set those dimensions. This is not the usual way this is done, by the way. Usually what will happen is I'll have a symbolic constant up here so I don't have to search for the code at the place where this is done. So let's just go ahead and set that up here while we're doing this. So static int oh, actually, this doesn't have to be static. It has to be final. So final int frame underscore width equals, and what is it right now? I thought I was going to keep the width. It's 200. And then final int frame underscore height equals, let's make this 800. And then let's come on down here and we'll replace these magic numbers with our constants here. Okay, so this is frame underscore width and frame underscore height, which should be right. I might have this backwards, so let me run this real quick and see. Okay. Yep, got them backwards. So let's go ahead and fix that. Okay, one more time. It looks like it came up behind the scenes. Nope. Oh, I wonder. Must not have run it. Okay. Let's try that again. Viewer. Run file. There we go. Okay, so that's looking a little bit better. It might need to be a bit wider than that, so we'll see. Okay. So let me kill this. And I'm going to go ahead and full screen my window here. So I created my title panel. Now I want to create my display panel. And the display panel is going to have a text field for the quote and the author. And before I had labels to go with these, and I didn't like the way that looked. So we're going to try it this way, okay? So we have to create the panel, which is the display panel. So we'll come on down here, display panel equals new J panel, and then quote text field equals new J text field, and what goes in here is the width of the field, which is the number of characters. Let me check this. It looks like I used a different name here. Where's that text field? Quote TF, author TF. Okay. So we made this a little simpler here. So let's just do that. Quote TF and author TF. So quote TF equals new J, oops, that should be a lowercase f there. There we go. So quote TF equals new J text field, and then this value is an integer, which is the width of the field. The quotes might be pretty long, so let's say 75. And then the other text field is the author, so author TF equals new J text field, and let's set this to be how about 30. Again, I might change these later on. Okay, now I have to add this stuff to the panel, and I'm going to play around a bit with this. Basically, I want them not to be one on the same line. So I want the quote to be on top and the author text to be under it. And so one way I can do that is I can use a grid panel, a grid layout, and set it on here. So display panel dot set layout, new grid layout, and then you give it the dimensions. And so here I want 2 rows and 1 column. Okay? And then I have to use Control-Shift-I to import the grid layout. And the way this grid layout works is it says to create a grid. In this case, it has 2 rows and 1 column. And by default, when you add stuff, it starts at the top and works down. So now if I say display panel.add, I'm adding the quote text field to the top, and then if I add display panel.add and then add the author field, it'll be right below it. Okay? And then I'm going to go ahead and add the display panel to the center of the main. So main panel.add display panel, and here I have to indicate what border or what region to put it in. So that's border layout dot center. Okay. All right, so far so good. Again, I should be able to run my code as I generate the GUI. So it's a little hard to see, but I believe we have two text fields in here. And since there's no label with them, it's kind of hard to see, but we'll see that that's never going to be empty. It'll always have a quote in it. Okay. All right, let's go on now and create the control panel. And I've got a lot to do here because I have a lot of buttons. So to make sure that I don't miss those, I'm going to grab the list of the buttons as a comment here and then just go through and make them. Okay, so Control C, and then this is going to be my control panel. So paste that in as a comment. I'm going to delete this. This is just to save me having to keep looking back and forth to make sure I create all the buttons. And actually, I can move that on down to where I get to that. So the first thing I need to do is create the panel, which is control panel, oops, equals new J panel. Okay. And as an experiment, let's go ahead and create a grid layout for this as well. Okay, so control panel dot set layout new grid layout. Okay, now I want one row and a column for each button. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 buttons. So I'll do that. Whoops. Got my, there we go. Okay. So that adds the panel. Excuse me, that creates the layout. All right, now we're going to do our buttons here. So first button equals new J button. And then this will be the text for the button that goes on the button. And I'm going to go with the very minimalistic kind of VCR type controls. So this represents the first, and then we'll just go ahead and copy this. And we'll make this one, what's the next one in the row? Previous. So I'll create those in the same order that they're going to be added to the GUI. There's the previous icon for that. And then we'll have next. And next, of course, is this symbol. And then, let's see, last, whoops. And then the code for the last button is this symbol. Oops, sorry. There we go. So again, you should recognize those VCR style controls. Okay, I'm going to take a pause here and I'll come back in a minute, continue. Okay, I had to step out for a minute, but let's continue now developing our app. We're in the process of defining the buttons, and it looks like we only have the one button left to do, which is our quit button. So there are our buttons. Of course, now we want to add the buttons to the control panel. So control panel dot add, and then first button. And now I want to make sure that I add them in the right order so they'll display correctly. And so that's one of the reasons that when I created them in that order. So we'll just go ahead and paste this in a few times. Whoops. Want that on a separate line. Okay, so the first button, then the previous button. Then the next button. Then the last button. And then finally the quit button. Thought about putting the quit button in the center where the stop icon usually is on a VCR style control. Might change that later, but for right now I'm going to put them like this. Okay, so we've added those to the control panel, and now we need to add the control panel to the main panel in the south. So main panel dot add, and then control panel, and then border layout south. Okay, and there we go. And let's see now. So I've added the main panel, and then I think I already added the main panel in because we have this working already, right? Yeah, up here. Good. So we can test this again. So let's see what our layout is going to look like. And did I miss the button there? I thought it was going to run for me. Oh, here we go. Okay, so this is looking pretty good. So here's going to be our quote text and our author text, and then here are our controls. And you know what? I forgot to do something. I had already set up some fonts, and I forgot to add the fonts. So we need to add the fonts to all of our buttons. That'll be kind of painful. Oops. Oh, and the quit button is not working yet. Yeah, we didn't set up any of the action listeners. I'm going to use the lambda expressions we saw in the last video for that. Okay, so let me check this. We have a display font and a button font. Let's come down here in the display, and we need to add the display font to the two text fields here. So quote tf dot set font display font, and let's copy that real quickly. Come on down here, paste that in, and change that back to author tf. So that adds the font that we created to each of the text fields. And then let's come on down here, and this is kind of tedious because now we have to add it to each of the buttons. So I'll just go ahead and interline that here. So first btn dot set, not add, set font. And this is called control font, I think. Let me check. Nope, display font. Okay, whoops, that's wrong. Let me check that again. So we have title font for the title, display font for the quote and the author, button font is what I want here. Okay. So here we go. Button font, very good. Now let's grab this. And then, of course, we have to add that font to all of the buttons. Which, like I mentioned, was, whoops, going to be a little tedious. Okay, so now we've added the fonts in. Let's take one last look at the GUI. And that looks pretty good. I might play around with the button font, make it a little bit bigger, but that looks pretty nice. And so we don't have any quotes displayed yet. And obviously the buttons don't work yet either. Okay. Quick thing I wanted to mention, because I'm using a grid layout for the buttons, it automatically sizes them to all be the same size. And that's often what you want with the buttons for just to make the interface look nice. Okay, so let's go ahead. And that's 30 minutes, so I'm going to call this a wrap. Actually, 40 minutes. Sorry about that. And then on the next video, I'll go ahead and add the action listener lambda expressions in. All right, so.